cabin hums with amber glow. Passengers settle in, clicking seatbelts before the heavy doors finally close. In seat 14C, a single father in a worn jacket sits quietly next to his young son. The boy looks at the overhead panels with curious eyes, whispering softly to his dad. A flight attendant stops. Her gaze is hesitant and strangely cold. Minutes later, the senior pilot strides out. He looks at the man in 14C. His voice is sharp and cold. "Sir, you don't sit here." The entire cabin turns. The man tightens his grip on his son's hand. Nobody knows. He actually owns this massive aircraft. The man's name is Michael Grant. He is 44 years old and a single father. Beside him is his 8-year-old son, Evan. For Evan, this isn't just a flight. It's his very first long-haul journey, a world of magic in the clouds. To the world, Michael looks like any other tired traveler, perhaps a middle management employee heading home after a stressful week. His face is etched with the gentle fatigue of a man who spends more time thinking than sleeping, his eyes reflecting a quiet depth that most people fail to notice. Michael chose seat 14C in economy. It was a deliberate choice, a calculated move in his quest for authenticity. He didn't want his son to grow up in a bubble of privilege, shielded by champagne, silk eye masks, and lie-flat beds that cost more than a small car. He wanted Evan to understand the rhythm of the world, the sound of crying babies, the smell of reheated pasta, the shuffling of feet in the aisle, and the shared anticipation of hundreds of strangers traveling to new horizons. He is dressed simply, faded denim, a plain navy shirt, and that old, worn, vintage jacket he's had for a decade. No assistance, no luxury luggage, no flash. Just a father and a son. But beneath the surface, Michael is a titan. He is a silent investor in the aviation world, a man whose name is whispered in boardrooms from New York to Singapore, but rarely seen in tabloids. He holds the controlling interest in the very airline operating this flight, Global Aero. He often flies incognito, sitting in the back of his own planes to evaluate the real-world service, to see how his staff treats the people who actually keep the business alive. He knows that the soul of an airline isn't in its first-class caviar or its expensive branding, but in how it handles a family in the middle of the plane when no one important is watching. Evan is buzzing with excitement, his legs kicking rhythmically against the seat in a way that only an 8-year-old can achieve. He points at the wings, asking about the engines, the fuel tanks, and how the giant bird stays in the sky. Michael answers softly, his voice full of patience and love. He explains the physics of flight as if it were a bedtime story, using his hands to mimic the airflow over the wings. "See those flaps, Evan? That's how the plane talks to the wind. It tells the air exactly where we want to go," he whispers. However, the peace is fragile. A passenger in the row ahead, a man in a sharp, expensive charcoal suit with a sour expression, huffs loudly. He is a man who clearly thinks his time is more valuable than anyone else's, a man who views economy as a necessary evil to be endured. He glares back at the noisy child through the gap in the seats, his lip curling in a sneer. To him, Michael and Evan look like budget travelers who are an inconvenience to his personal comfort. He checks his gold watch every 2 minutes, sighing dramatically to ensure everyone knows he is displeased. The disgruntled passenger reaches up and aggressively presses the call button. Ding! The sound echoes through the quiet cabin like a challenge, sharp and demanding. A flight attendant arrives. The passenger whispers something, pointing a thumb back at Michael with a dismissive, derogatory gesture. The attendant, a young woman who looks stressed and overworked, nods quickly and turns to Michael. Her tone isn't helpful, it's a reprimand. "Sir, you need to keep your child quiet. This is a quiet cabin and other passengers have paid for a peaceful environment. We have rules for a reason." Michael nods politely, his eyes remaining calm and unbothered. "I apologize, he's just excited for his first trip. I'll keep him calm." He pulls Evan closer, whispering a story about a dragon that lives in the clouds to distract him. But the tension in the cabin has already shifted. Eyes are on them now. Judgmental eyes from the preferred rows. The atmosphere becomes heavy with the unspoken hierarchy of the sky. Michael watches the interaction carefully. He notes the way the attendant didn't smile at Evan, how she didn't offer a coloring book or a kind word. He sees a flaw in his company, a lack of human kindness that no amount of profit can compensate for. He realizes that his staff has been trained to prioritize the loud and the wealthy over the quiet and the humble. It is a systemic failure, and he is right in the middle of it. Disaster strikes in a small way. Evan, in his excitement to see a passing cloud that looked like a castle, accidentally drops his headphones. They slide under the seat and into the aisle. Michael unbuckles his seatbelt and leans down to retrieve them. For a few seconds, his body partially blocks the narrow walkway as he reaches into the dark gap between the floor and the seat frame. The passenger from earlier lets out a theatrical, booming groan. "Can you move? Some of us actually have places to be. I'm trying to get to the restroom before the service starts, and I'm blocked by this," he snaps, even though they are at 30,000 feet with nowhere to go. He makes a show of standing up and looming over Michael, his face reddening with manufactured rage. The lead purser, a woman named Sarah with a stiff posture and an air of practiced superiority, marches down the aisle. She has been trained to handle VIPs, and clearly she has decided Michael is not one. She doesn't ask if Michael needs help or if everything is all right. Instead, she stands over him, looking down with a cold professional mask. She begins to whisper to Michael about seat suitability, cabin safety, and passenger harmony. Her voice is like ice, polite on the surface but cutting underneath, designed to make a person feel small. Michael sits back up, holding the headphones. He brushes the dust off his jacket and looks her in the eye, his gaze unwavering. "Is there a problem with my seat, ma'am?" "I'm just helping my son." Her answer is vague, coated in professional coldness. "This area is prioritized for our frequent flyers and our gold tier members, sir. We feel you might be more comfortable in the very back row near the galley. There's more space for families there, and you won't be disturbing the business travelers who need to work." "Prioritized?" Michael asked calmly, his voice steady. "I booked this seat weeks ago. I paid the full fare. It was available on the map, and my son likes being near the wing." "It's a matter of policy and cabin flow," she lies, her eyes darting to the wealthy passenger who is nodding in agreement, fueling her arrogance. "We want to ensure everyone has the experience they've come to expect from Global Aero. It's for the best." Michael nods slowly. He is ready to move. He wants to see how far this goes. He wants to see the absolute limit of their arrogance. He wants to know if they would truly force a father and a terrified child to walk the aisle of shame to the back of the bus. But before he can even gather his bag, the cockpit door clicks open. The captain walks out. He is a man named Miller with 3 decades of experience, looking sharp in his 4-striped uniform. He has been briefed by the purser via the interphone about a disruption in 14C that needed command authority. The pilot looks Michael up and down. He sees the old jacket with the slightly frayed collar. He sees the child with the messy hair and the cheap toy. He decides in an instant who this man is. To Captain Miller, Michael is a problem passenger, someone who doesn't understand the rules of his sky, someone who is beneath the dignity of his aircraft. He speaks with a voice that carries across the rows, authoritative and harsh, designed to end the conversation. "Sir, you don't sit here." Evan's eyes well up with tears. The joy of his first flight is vanishing, replaced by a cold fear of authority. He grips his father's arm, his knuckles white. "Are we in trouble, Daddy? Did I do something wrong?" "I'll be quiet, I promise," he whispers, his voice trembling so much it breaks Michael's heart. Michael strokes his son's hair, a protective, grounding gesture. His face remains a mask of absolute calm, though his mind is racing with the implications of what he's seeing. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't argue. He looks at the pilot, searching his eyes for even a flicker of empathy. "Is this an official request, Captain? Are you ordering a paying passenger to vacate his seat without any safety violation, any health issue, or any valid cause?" The pilot doesn't blink. He is used to being the god of his aluminum tube. "I am the captain of this vessel. My word is the final cause for the comfort and safety of my cabin. If I say you move, you move. Please gather your things now, or we will have authorities waiting at the gate to escort you off. Don't make this harder for the boy." The cabin goes silent. The important passenger in the front smirks, leaning back in his seat as if he's just won a grand prize. The humiliation is public, broadcast to everyone from row 1 to row 40. The pilot thinks he is clearing his cabin of a nuisance, a low-class distraction. He has no idea he is looking at the man who signed the very contract for the fuel currently burning in his engines. He has no idea he is looking at the man who has the power to ground his career in a single 30-second phone call. The irony is as thick as the clouds outside. If you believe you should never judge a person by their appearance or where they sit, subscribe now so you don't miss the moment everything flips. Michael reaches into his old jacket. The movement is slow, deliberate, almost hypnotic. The purser and the captain watch him like hawks, expecting him to pull out a boarding pass, a crumpled complaint form, or perhaps a cheap camera to record them. Instead, he pulls out a smartphone. It isn't the latest, flashiest model with a dozen lenses. It's rugged, encased in a heavy-duty protector, and looks purely functional. He opens a secure internal application, a platform hidden from the public eye, protected by 3 layers of biometric locks. With a few swift, practiced taps, he sends a short, encrypted authentication code to the aircraft's satellite ground link system. It's a silent signal, a ping that travels from the plane to a secure server in London, then bounces back to the cockpit's flight management computer. Inside the cockpit, the first officer, a younger man named David who stayed behind to monitor the navigation, suddenly hears a high-priority melodic internal alert. It's a sound he's only heard in training simulations and heard about in legends. A red and gold notification flashes on his secondary screen, overriding the weather radar and the fuel gauges. It's a code prime notification. In the history of global aero, this only happens when a member of the board of directors or a majority owner is on board and has verified their presence via the secure link. It is the ultimate override command. The first officer's face goes from bored to deathly pale in 3 seconds. He stares at the screen, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He checks the passenger manifest against the digital ID that just pinged his system. The name, Michael J. Grant. His hands tremble as he reads the digital bio attached to the code. Majority shareholder, chairman of the board, founder of the Grant Aviation Group. Total ownership, 51%. He quickly grabs his headset, his voice cracking as he speaks through the intercom directly to the handset in the galley where the captain is standing, still looming over Michael like a schoolyard bully. Captain Miller, come to the front. Now. Urgent. It's a code prime. Repeat. We have an active code prime in 14C. Do you copy? The pilot frowns, confused and annoyed by the urgency. He shoots one last triumphant glare at Michael, as if saying, "Stay right there so I can watch you crawl away," and retreats to the galley area. He picks up the phone. "What is it, David? I'm busy clearing a seat." The first officer's voice is a terrified whisper that makes the captain's blood run cold. "Sir, the man in 14C, look at the screen on your tablet. Check the secure manifest. It's Michael Grant, the chairman, the guy who owns the airline." The pilot's brow furrows, his brain refusing to process the information. The Michael Grant? The owner? In 14th century? Don't be ridiculous. Yes, sir. He just authenticated. He's right there. In economy. David confirmed it with ground command. It's him. The pilot looks through the small window of the cockpit door. His heart drops into his stomach like a lead weight. The blood drains from his face, leaving him looking sickly and gray. The ordinary man he just insulted, the man he threatened with the police, isn't just a passenger. He is the owner of the airline. He is the man who literally owns the wings, keeping them in the air. The man who owns the very house the captain lives in and the school his kids attend. The pilot turns around and looks back at the cabin. His perspective shifts instantly, like a camera lens snapping into focus. He no longer sees a man in an old jacket. He sees power, quiet, immense, and absolute. He sees his 30-year career, his pension, and his reputation flashing before his eyes, disappearing into the jet stream. He walks back out into the cabin. This time his gait is entirely different. He isn't strutting, he is stumbling, his legs feeling like jelly. His eyes are wide, filled with a mix of terror, shame, and profound, gut-wrenching regret. He looks at the purser, who is still hovering near Michael with a smirk, and gives her a look of pure, unadulterated desperation. He reaches seat 14C. He stops. He stands at attention, a reflex of his military background, but his shoulders are slumped and his hands are shaking at his sides. He looks down at his shoes, then finally at Michael, who is quietly comforting his son. He speaks in a low, cracked voice, barely a whisper. "Sir, Mr. Grant, is it really you? Please, tell me I'm dreaming. Tell me I didn't just say those things." Michael looks up. He doesn't smile. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't show even a flicker of anger. He just looks at the pilot with a neutral, piercing gaze that seems to see through the uniform and right into the man's soul. He nods slightly, a small, dignified movement. "It is, Captain Miller, and my son would like to know why he's in trouble for dropping his headphones. He thinks he's done something terrible." The cabin falls into an absolute, suffocating silence. It's the kind of silence that happens right before a lightning strike. The lead purser, Sarah, who was standing nearby with a smug, "I told you so" look, suddenly feels like the floor is disappearing beneath her. She freezes, her mouth slightly open, her face turning a vivid shade of crimson as the realization hits her like a physical blow. The wealthy passenger who complained suddenly finds his expensive gold watch very uninteresting. He shrinks into his seat, pulling his jacket over his chest, trying to become invisible to the man he just tried to humiliate. He realizes that the man he called a budget traveler could probably buy his entire company, his house, and his car before lunch. The pilot bows his head deeply, his voice breaking. I had no idea, sir. No idea. I am deeply, profoundly sorry. My behavior was unacceptable. It was beneath the standards of this airline and beneath the standards of a human being. Please, let me make this right. Anything." The pilot continues to apologize, his voice now audible to the surrounding 10 rows. He is no longer the god of the sky. He is a man pleading for his professional life. He immediately offers to move Michael and Evan to the first-class suites, his voice desperate. "We have the royal suite available, Mr. Grant. It's fully private, with a bed, a shower, and personalized service. Please let us move you and your son immediately. It would be an honor to serve you there. I will personally carry your bags." Michael looks at Evan, who is staring at the pilot in confusion, then back at the man in the uniform. He speaks clearly, his voice resonant so that the whole section can hear every word. "No, thank you, Captain. I think we'll stay right here. In seat 14C, it's a perfectly good seat, isn't it? It has a window, a tray table, and it's where we belong today." The pilot is stunned, his face twitching with anxiety. "But sir, after what happened, the discomfort, the atmosphere I created, and my son is learning something today," Michael says calmly, his eyes never leaving the pilot's. "He's learning that a seat is just a piece of plastic and fabric. It doesn't give you value. He's learning that how you treat the person sitting in it, regardless of the row number or the price of the ticket, is what defines your character. We are perfectly fine here among the people who actually pay for your salary, Captain. These are the people who make this airline possible." The lead purser is already frantically making notes in her digital log, her hands shaking so badly she almost drops the device. She knows her career at Global Aero is effectively over. Michael watches her for a moment, his gaze sharp. "Make sure the report is accurate, Sarah," he says, using her name for the first time, which makes her flinch. "Include the part where you told me I didn't suit this area because I wasn't a frequent flyer. I'd hate for the board of directors to miss that detail when they review the customer service metrics next week." The passenger who had caused the trouble earlier leans over, his voice trembling with a pathetic kind of fear. "Sir, I had no idea who you were. I'm so sorry for being rude. I was just stressed about my meeting. I didn't mean anything by it." Michael looks at him, a cold but fair look that shuts the man up instantly. "You shouldn't be sorry because of who I am. You should be sorry because of who you were being. My son is 8 years old and he has better manners than a grown man in a $5,000 suit. He knows how to say excuse me and thank you. That is something you should think about during the rest of this flight. Character is what you do when you think no one is watching. The flight continues, but the energy has completely transformed. The service is now impeccable, but not just for Michael. The crew is suddenly terrified and treats every passenger in economy as if they were royalty. They are handing out extra blankets, checking on babies with genuine care, and smiling with a warmth that was missing before. They've realized that the person in the cheap seat might just be their boss. Evan is gifted a high-quality metal model of the aircraft by a trembling flight attendant who also brings him a plate of warm chocolate chip cookies and fresh milk from first class. He smiles, happy to have a new toy, his fear forgotten as children's fears often are when kindness returns. Michael continues to observe, taking mental notes of every interaction. He sees how fear of authority can be turned into a standard of excellence, but he knows he needs to turn that fear into a genuine culture of respect. The pilot returns to the cockpit, but he doesn't stay there. His voice comes over the intercom for the mid-flight announcement. It sounds different now, deeper, more humble, more human. He doesn't just talk about altitude, tailwinds, and arrival times. He speaks about the privilege of flying and the importance of every single guest on board. He apologizes to the cabin for any earlier tensions. The entire energy of the plane has shifted from a cold hierarchy of status to a space of quiet, mutual respect. It is the most professional flight Global Aero has seen in years. The plane touches down safely at its destination. The wheels kiss the tarmac with a gentle, barely there thud, a perfect landing by a captain who knew his every move was being scrutinized by the man who signed his paycheck. Michael and Evan wait until the very end to leave. Michael doesn't want a grand exit. He doesn't want a motorcade or a red carpet on the tarmac. He walks through the jet bridge holding his son's hand, carrying their own modest bags. He looks like any other dad returning from a long trip, his vintage jacket slightly wrinkled, his hair a bit messy from the flight. But the wheels of change are already turning at 10,000 miles per hour. Before Michael even reaches the baggage claim, an internal top priority report has been sent to the global headquarters. He has already dictated the core changes to his executive assistant via voice memo. By the next morning, a new mandatory training module is issued to every single employee of Global Aero, from the veteran pilots and pursers to the newest baggage handlers and gate agents. The title of the memo, the 14C Protocol. It focuses on one core value. Dignity is not a premium service. It's a fundamental right. It mandates that every passenger be treated with the same level of respect as the owner of the company, and that seat prioritization based on status is strictly forbidden in matters of human interaction. As they drive home through the city lights, Evan looks at the metal model plane in his lap, the sun catching its polished wings. "Daddy, were you mad at the pilot?" He seemed really scared at the end. Michael A. smile, a warm and sincere smile that reached the depths of her eyes. "No, Evan, I wasn't mad. I was just observing the world. Sometimes people forget their manners when they think they are more important than others. And I learned something too." "Now, what did you learn?" "You already know everything about planes and business. I learned that real power doesn't need to shout to be heard. It doesn't need a golden chair, a loud voice, or a fancy title to command respect. Real power is staying calm when the world is being loud. And true respect, it's not something you buy with a ticket or earn with a membership card. It's something you give to everyone, from the person in seat 1A to the person in the very last row by the restrooms." The flight was just a few hours, but the lesson would last Evan a lifetime. It would shape him into a leader who listens rather than dictates. Michael Grant remains a silent owner, rarely seen in the news or on red carpets, but from that day on, his airline became known as the kindest skies in the world. People started booking Global Aero not for the speed or the price, but for how they felt when they stepped on board, valued, seen, and respected. Because, as the staff of Global Aero now knows by heart, you never truly know who is sitting in seat 14C. It might just be the person who decides your future, or it might just be someone who deserves your kindness simply because they are human. If you believe that respect should not depend on status, subscribe for more stories like this and leave a comment. What would you have done if you were told you don't sit here?